Hi guys, I'm Blackie and welcome back to the channel. Okay, today let's talk a little bit about water and about our water filtration and stuff like that. Now, as you know, I have done quite a few videos talking about how to find water, how to process water, stuff like that. Today in our modern environment, filters are everywhere and they're cheap and they're just good insurance to prevent you from getting giardia and stuff like that whenever you're going on long hikes where you're going to have to replenish the water source from indigenous water and not find, go to a station or something and get portable water. You have to rely on what's available and filter it. Now, for my usage, for many years, most of my time, I always boiled my water. And that's still a very viable way to go, but it's a lot more money than sense. Anyway, for many years, what I did was I simply boiled my water. I ran 2 canteens, and whenever my water supply got low, I would find a water source, boil a canteen cup, fill, boil, fill, allow to cool, put in the stream, whatever, cool off in the canteen to be able to get my water. Time consuming. Having a filter today just makes more sense. Now, I went for one of the GRAYLs. These things are not cheap. However, it is one of the best filters, in my opinion, around for the woodsman because it will filter the water all the way down to viruses, which is very handy in our modern times, especially when you consider that you find this water source and it seems to be okay, it smells good, everything's fine, and what you don't know is a half-mile up there's a pig farm and they're hosing stuff out in the creek that you don't know. And so therefore it just makes sense to do some sort of filtering, and the GRAYL will take care of that. But on like that pendulum I like to talk about, the fact that it will filter down that fine means that the filter inside of it can eventually plug up. How do you know when the filter is plugged up? It's reached the end of its life cycle. When you go to press it down full of water and it takes more than a minute to fully press it, that's when they tell you need to change out the cartridge. Now, whenever I got mine originally with the filter that came in it, it lasted about 3 months and then it quit working. Why? Because I live down here in the south and it's red clay. Red clay is an iron ore like clay soil, and that fine particulate matter, anytime it rains, our water down here just turns pumpkin orange in places. And it's because of that saturation of that. So when you go to filter water out of that stream, that lake, that pond, or whatever, it's going to have some degree of that red clay in it. And that red clay, once it dries, it locks together and it becomes concrete. And it is tough to get it to break up. And in a filter like this, I was doing like they say you're supposed to, and I was drying it out every time I was done. So when I got back from my excursion, I would take everything apart, hose it off in the sink, let it dry, and then I'd put it back together and put it on the shelf. It only lasted about 3 months, and then that filter was done. Afterwards, I decided to make a change, and that's when I went to using a Millbank bag. Now, several companies make Millbank bags, and that's just a name that the British called it for a water filtration bag. It is a dense, untreated cotton. You don't want nylon or nothing, you want cotton because you want the fibers to swell. That's where it gets its filtering ability. Now, I made this simply by getting some of the light canvas and then sewing it up myself, really tight seamed. Now, what you want to do is you want to take this, and I've come up to my water source, and you want to soak it first. You want it completely wet. Don't just try to pour water through it, because the actual fibers of the canvas have to swell up like a sponge. See, that's what gives you your filtration ability. So I'm going to put it in the water and I'm going to let it soak for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, until it's completely saturated. And then I'm going to pull it up full of water and let it run till all that water runs out. Now it should be completely saturated. Now I'm going to fill it full of water this time. When I come up, I'm going to hold it at the corner so it goes to one point. And that's when I'm going to fill up the cup of my GRAYL. Why I'm doing this is to get that red clay, that turbidity, out of the water. And it greatly reduces it. No, the water's not safe to drink. That's what this is going to do. But what it's going to do, it's going to pull out of there those floating bits, you know, that red clay, that algae, that whatever, and it's going to catch it in this bag and allow the water come through to be a lot cleaner going into here. Now, yes, you can do it with a bandana, but make sure it's a good dense bandana, and it's how you're going to get it. I like the idea of the Millbank bag versus the bandana, because the bandana is I just drape it over here and I pour through it. This, when I soak it and bring it all the way up here, it's got a filter all the way through, and then it runs on the outside of it, see, to come out at this point. So I'm getting much more filtration of that water than I do going through a single layer of that bandana. See, bigger, better, more efficient. Having started doing this, I got this filter, when I finally had to replace the filter the second time, it was over a year and a half of using this almost on a daily basis to filter. Either tap water, creek water, river water, mud water, whatever. This was my water bottle that I carried for just about everything. It rode in the truck with me when I was just running around town. And so if I wanted water, this is where it came out of. And so I got a year and a half out of that filter before it finally got to where it was just a little too stiff to push it through in about a minute, minute and a half time period. And so I changed it. Filters run about $25, so I want to make sure I get the full usage out of it. Now, in that same time, you know, which I'm not going to filter tap water with this, I'll just use this, but I'm talking about raw water sources of creeks, rivers. The Millbank bag comes out, and I utilize it. I went through 3 of these in the time it took that filter to plug up, where these would get so saturated with mud and stuff like that, I would come home after an event, after a camp out or whatever, go to the sink, I would turn it inside out, put it in the sink, and I would start washing it. You know, I wouldn't put a lot of chemicals in there, I just put like a drop of Dawn onto it and sit there and scrunch it up like a bath cloth and keep going and saturate it all the way through it and rinse it repeatedly and then put it outside in the sun to dry. They gave up the ghost after about 4 months of heavy use. The seams would go, or the final material would go from all of that cleaning. But my filter was still going strong, see. So for me, this was a whole lot cheaper than having to replace a $25 filter, see. Now, had I gone with a heavier canvas, yes, it will last longer, and I might have got a year or so out of it, but I want it to dry. And that's something that most people don't mention when they're talking about these. And I haven't done it on this one. This is a new one I just put together. Is I will put a grommet and a hole in one corner so I can tie it to the outside of the pack. So as I'm walking, it's fanning. I can hang it up in a tree at camp and let the wind dry it, etc. So that when I'm filtering, I can hang this up and let it dry. I've also several times when this is wet and after I've done filtering, wash my face. You know, it's one of them things I'm using this not just as a Millbank, but I'm using it as other things too. You know, because it's just filtering the water. I can use it as a hot pot grab. I can whatever. It becomes a useful piece in camp as well as just a Millbank bag. See. So, in conclusion, if you're going to be using one of the filters, and I strongly recommend that you do today, they're cheap and available. Be it the cartridge type filter that you can screw onto a soda bottle like you get at Walmart or something, or you can do a gravity feed hang up. Those are all great. Pre-filter it. If nothing else, take a bandana and pre-filter it. Get the most longevity out of that filter you can for the least money, so I don't have to replace it that often. Now these GRAYLs they're an investment, but what I'm doing, it's worth it, because I would get a lot more use out of this than I would those little small other filters. And of course, I know someone's going to say down there in the comments about a life straw. Life straws are fantastic for drinking directly from. How do you fill up a pot to make, cook with? How do you fill your canteen up with it? Take a mouthful and spit in the canteen? Unless you've got a filter that I can filter water and it can be gravity fed or forced through, so I can fill up a pot. I can fill up a canteen. I want something I can grab and go quickly. And so this allows me to filter down to where this or whatever filter system I'm using is going to allow me to get my water and get going, and I don't have to waste so much time. Boiling absolutely sterilized it, but it didn't remove the turbidity, so you're still drinking dead pond scum. And it took, in my deep south in the heat of the summer, when you stop and refill and it's 98 or 102 or 118 with heat index like we have down here, you got to then heat up a fire, boil your water, pour hot water into the canteens, and then hope in a half hour, 45 minutes they've cooled off enough you can drink. Time consuming. That's why I went to these. It was quicker and easier. Plus, I don't have to change the temperature of the water. So if I find that cool stream in the hot summer and that water's coming out of the ground, it's 50-something degrees, I can filter it right now and have cool water. I don't have to heat it up. This and the Millbank bag takes care of filtration and takes care of my water needs in the field. Hope you've enjoyed this content, guys. If you have, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.